Down in the Valley, where the girls go naked. And this is my review and recap on Legacy, which is episode 6, Down in the Valley, where the girls go naked. It's a lot to cover in a short amount of time. I'm going to try not to go over, but before I begin with my review and recap, click subscribe, comment, watch, hit the bell notification. Down in the Valley, Mercedes and Autumn basically stopped by to see Tara, her daughter, who is basically doing tennis lessons. And Mercedes tried to explain to Tara as to the reason why basically she did not get a chance to be with her on the weekend that was basically designated for her. Her daughter definitely was very, very upset and told her mother that she had one weekend to basically to spend with her, and she couldn't even get that right. But Mercedes tried to explain to her exactly what happened, but her daughter basically didn't want to hear it. Her daughter was basically really upset. And that time that Mercedes was supposed to have her daughter for the weekend, of course, she was actually in jail for Patrice, who basically stole her 20 stacks. So Tara told Mercedes that she did not want to basically to be a dancer anymore, and that she's quitting. And Mercedes was trying to tell her, well, you really love doing dancing. This is something that you love. Why do you want to quit? And Tara's daughter told Mercedes, well, the only reason why that she was taking dance is to be with her because she loved being with her. But of course, you know how teenagers are. They were really, really upset, and she didn't really want to hear it, so she walked away. At that time, this is when uh, Tara's stepmother, basically came and interfered and told her to go back to her tennis lessons. And this is when she explained to Mercedes that her daughter was basically upset because she really wanted to see, her mother, and that she is basically tired of having to pick her Tara up off of the floor, basically, and she's crying because Mercedes didn't basically show up. And so this is when the stepmother told Mercedes that, you have to be a little bit more responsible. It's not my fault. That basically my cheating husband basically, had an affair with you, and that she is taking responsibility for her daughter. And then this is when Mercedes says, well, that's my daughter. Basically, I'm the one who basically gave birth to her, and that, you know, whatever she has to do, she's going to get custody. But Mercedes told Tara's stepmother that basically, things came up. She couldn't help it. And this is when stepmother said, well, you have to stop being a little, I forgot what she told her, but anyway. So Mercedes says, look, I basically got to go. And, because my Uber, and of course, you know who the Uber person was. That was basically Autumn, basically waiting for Mercedes. And so we see Autumn and Mercedes in the car. And Mercedes is very upset. And Mercedes says, well, why are you so upset? normally he says, well, Mercedes says, well, you're too quiet. It says when you quiet, that's when you say the most. And so this is when Miss Autumn basically teased and said, well, I know you were into doing tennis. And so they basically got started and on their merry way. They are Thelma and Louise. And basically, Thelma and Louise, they're basically going around to all of these check cashing and transferring money to various accounts. And now we see that Mercedes had told Autumn, if I knew that this was going to be so easy, I would have been basically your friend a long time ago. And so while they're basically on their way to their next adventure, um, Mercedes basically see the little pink gun that Autumn basically has in the compartment, the glove compartment. And Mercedes says, well, what's this? Does this hurt anybody? She said, basically, this gun is basically for my protection or for our protection with all this money that we've been basically transferring around. So while we're basically dealing with Mercedes and Autumn running around town, we basically see Little Murder in Mississippi. Mississippi is basically hanging out. Mississippi, Mississippi is a beautiful, gorgeous, black chocolate woman. I mean, she's gorgeous, and she looked even more gorgeous when she was basically in that all pink. And so we basically see Mississippi basically with her, I don't know, is it a little girl or is it a little boy? But anyway, the baby is basically in the stroller. And so Little Murder, basically come rolling up, dressed in all of his designer wares. He's all blinged out. And so Miss Little Murder sits down beside her and says, look, if you're trying to distort me or if you're trying to bribe me, basically, this is, it's not working. And so actually Mississippi says, no, I'm not really, what you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about. And so this is when Mississippi sat down and asked Little Murder, are you basically really serious about your music and everything? And he said, yeah, I'm serious about my music and everything. He says, well, why don't you look at this? So Mississippi showed him another video of her, and this video was apparently one of the hip hop magazines basically caught Mississippi dancing to Little Murder, and they talked about it. I think it was called the Hip Hop World, and they was telling, and it was talking about that the song was a hit and that Mississippi was basically killing it. And so Little Murder gets up and he's all excited and everything, and he said, oh my goodness, I'm blowing up. And so this is when uh, Mississippi basically sat down and told Miss Little Murder, says, well, what do you want to do? You don't even have, on your Twitter, or I think it's, yeah, your Twitter, you only have 4 pictures. You don't have nothing. And so this is when Mississippi laid out the plan that she basically had. So in other words, Mississippi is basically playing a role of being Little Murder's, I guess, love interest or anything. It's kind of sort of like a cover up, especially for Little Murder, since he's in a world that is really, really hard when it comes to uh, gay black men in the hip hop world. And it's the same thing for women who are in the hip hop world. Basically, what Mississippi was basically saying, that if you're in this business, who wants to actually, like she said, who actually want to hear or deal or even come to the club if they know that you are down in the dirty delta, dealing with, in so many words, dealing with a trans person or gay person, they not even want to be dealt with that, which is basically true. What she was basically saying. And so Lou Murder told Mississippi, said, okay, so you're going to be, I forgot what they said. I don't know, the some kind of brand. I'm not into brands, but anyway, this is when uh, Mississippi told him that if you're going to be breaking into this business, you got to make people want to, what did she say? I don't like to use the word bitch, but anyway, make the bitch want to fight you, and make the men or make the guys want to be like you. So while we're dealing with that, Little Murder basically also noticed that um, this boyfriend, I believe his name is Derek, the white boy or the white man who she's basically dealing with, has been gnawing and knocking on her again. And this is when um, Little Murder mentioned about the bruise that basically was on her face. And then this was where she says, black don't crack. But Little Murder was basically saying that, yeah, black do crack. And then he noticed that her wrist actually also had been damaged. While Mississippi and Little Murder is basically putting together a little social media, trying to get Little Murder basically, more likes, and trying to get him a brand, trying to get him his music to pop and everything, and also his social media to pop. Now you know that Mississippi is always on her social media, and so while Mississippi and Little Murder is talking about that, uh, Uncle Clifford, she basically at home chilling, listen to Bobby Womack. I can understand it. And this is when we see in pink a little flash of text. Little Murder is basically hounding and messing with Uncle Clifford, and still asking her, when you gonna let me take you out? When you gonna let me take you out? So, of course, Uncle Clifford, she's very excited due to the fact that he, Little Murder really likes her, and she really likes him. But this is where we meet the grandmother of Uncle Clifford. And this is where the title of the recap and the review is called Legacy. And this is where we learn that Uncle Clifford basically had inherited the legacy of his grandmother's basically club, which basically she owned it. But I had to basically look at this a couple of times. It's because I did not realize that Loretta Devine is basically portraying the grandmother of Uncle Clifford, and Loretta Devine is blind. I had no idea that she was basically blind until I went and looked at it again. And so we find out that Uncle Clifford is kind of watching and hanging out with her, excuse me. Sometimes I will say he, hers, no. But anyway, with her grandmother. And the house is basically painted pink. So we go on and we find out a little bit more history about the Peak and P.Valley, and how basically Uncle Clifford, she inherit all of this debt by them signing all kinds of these loans, cash loans, lending loans. And the grandmother basically goes and tell Uncle Clifford, because Uncle Clifford was telling her, he finally tells his grandmother that they are basically going to lose the pink. And so, and then this is when the grandmother says, well, how are you going to, how is this occur? And then this is when we see that Uncle Clifford, she goes and pull out all of these papers. And then this is when the grandmother says, well, I understand exactly, you know, I did a lot of stuff. I couldn't really see the figures and everything. Um, I signed some papers I had no business signing, didn't know what I was signing, and you also was signing papers and had no idea exactly what was actually going on. And so we go and we see that Uncle Clifford was upset, but then this is when we go on and we find out that Uncle Clifford is going to go ahead and take little Myrtle up. And so the grandmother tells Uncle Clifford to invite him over to the house. I forgot the name that she called little Myrtle, but invite him over to the house. And then this is Clifford said, well, I'm not dating anybody or bringing anybody. And then this is when the grandmother says, go ahead, invite him so we can put some more or add some more in the pot with the neck bones you got in there. And so we hop over to where Uncle Clifford is basically getting ready and to do that date is because he's in the nail salon. And he's in the nail salons and he's talking, I guess, Korean or Taiwanese or whatever. And in the nail salon we see Louise. And Louise is basically I'm going to say an alumni of Uncle Clifford, graduating girls who basically stripped in the club and no longer is a part of the club and somewhat has been successful. Well, Louise, no, I think it's uh, Louise is working for the mayor. And this is when we find out that Uncle Clifford says, sit down and, keep me some company. Give me some chit chat. So she sits down with Uncle Clifford. And then this is when Uncle Clifford tell his alumni that you basically, you left P.Valley and you really hadn't really decided to come, and you were one of my first girls who actually, I guess, graduated from the P.Valley. And so Uncle Clifford says, look, I need to find out some tea. I don't care if it's lukewarm or if it's piping hot. Please bring me some tea. And so while we're dealing with Uncle Clifford talking to one of his alumni, we see that Autumn and Mercedes. Autumn and Mercedes is basically in looks like a little, I'm not going to say a little soul restaurant. And Andre basically rolls in. But before Andre rolls in, we see Autumn basically counting money underneath the table and giving the portion to Mercedes. And then Mercedes says, hell, if I knew it was going to be like this, I should have been your friend a long time ago. If I knew you would get cash like this. Yeah, but consequences to them, that cashing thing. But anyway, so Autumn is basically talking to Mercedes, and then all of a sudden she stopped talking and she holds her head down. And then Mercedes says, what up, what up, what up, what up? And then that's when she realized that Andre had rolled into the restaurant and to pick up an order. And Mercedes says, oh my God, look at her. If I didn't even know his eyes and everything, I'll mess around and get pregnant myself just by him looking at you. And then this is when Mercedes says, well, have you basically dealt with him? And Autumn says, no, I haven't. And so this one says, well, I guess that's good and everything. Anytime somebody interrupts your meal and interrupt, that's a good thing. And so Autumn and Mercedes getting ready to roll out. And so this is when the waitress says, never mind about your bill. Basically, your bill been paid for. And then Autumn says, damn, y'all high yellow women. And then this is when they basically walks out. Now, Andre is basically in a bit of a stiff. He getting ready to do some bullshit that he is going to really catch flat. And what it is that we see that Andre is in the company of Corbett, Wayne, and I don't know what the other brother in the corporate in the company of them, and they're basically talking about guns, Abraham Lincoln, and everything. And so Andre says, well, okay, well, let's get on and let's sign this paperwork and let's get this deal and let's get everything on and rolling and let's get going. And so this is when Wayne, one of the one of Corbett's brothers said, Wayne basically told Corbett, you sign first. So Corbett basically sat down and looked at the paperwork, and then this is when the other brother says, what are you doing, Corbett? Corbett says, I'm basically reading. He says, well, you're not a lawyer, just sign the paperwork. And so Corbett Corbett refused to sign. And then this is when Wayne told his other brother, said, I knew that he was not going to do it. I knew he was going to do it. I knew it. I just knew it. And so this is when Wayne grabbed the shotgun that they have been admiring, and it has like a little bit of history, and pointed directly at Corbett. And this is when basically Andre says, look, I'm not a family lawyer or anything like that, but basically you guys need to basically go and sign these paperwork so we can just, get this out of the way. And Wayne said, I knew he wasn't signing this paperwork. And then they asked him, well, Corbett, how come you're not signing the paper? And then Corbett said, well, I don't want to sign this because basically we'll make more money if we basically lease the land and not sell it off. And plus, I want to basically keep it and be able to pass it down to generation after generation. This is basically what happened with our father. This is what he did for us. This is the reason why you are where you are, because of our father. And then one of the brothers said, I don't give a damn about this legacy. As a matter of fact, I'm glad he's gone. I want to get rid of this house. I don't want nothing to do with it or anything like that. And so this is when Andre was like, oh God. And then this is when Corbett went on and he signed the paperwork, but actually it was like fake. It wasn't any bullets or anything like that. So they basically, little Wayne forced him to sign the paper, right? And so when I say this is basically gonna hit Andre in the buttocks about it, right? But later on we see um that Autumn and Mercedes, it's basically at Mercedes' house, basically willing and dealing, getting more fake IDs and everything. And we see that the guy who's basically giving Mercedes the fake IDs actually want to get with Mercedes, and Mercedes was like, nah, this is not what's happening with me. And so this is when Autumn asks Mercedes, it says, basically, where's your bathroom? And so Mercedes says, this is the bathroom, bathroom down the hall and everything. So we basically see that Mercedes, we see that Autumn loses her way and somewhat winds up in the room that Mercedes had put together for her daughter Tara. And then this is when Mercedes came in and said, I know damn well you didn't think that this was a bathroom. And so this is when we find a little bit more about Autumn. We find a little bit more about Mercedes. They go on and Mercedes says, well, I basically painted the room purple. And she asks Autumn, well, what do you think about it? She says, it looks really good. It's like a girl looking kind of room. And Mercedes says, yeah, all of this, it took me 7 years to put this room together for her. And now she she hates purple. Now she likes green. And then Autumn says, well, just like her mom. And so, and then this is when we go on and we see that Mercedes and Autumn has a candid conversation about, being mothers and things like that. And then Mercedes tells that how much she misses, not having a daughter. And then this is when Mercedes says, well, what's your daughter's name? And then we find out the reason why that Autumn Night name is Autumn, because that's the name of her daughter. So she's taken Autumn for her stripper name for her daughter. And so we see that the two of them has basically bonded, with that. In the meantime, we get and we see that um, back over to where Little Murder is basically with his entourage, and all of them are at the recording studio, and they are wondering why uh, 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 Little Murder didn't basically show up at the studio. So we know that Little Murder was basically on a date with Uncle Clifford, but they asked him, and they told Little Murder, basically said that we basically had a recording for you, but you basically didn't show up or anything. And this is when Mississippi chimed in and said, well, basically he was busy. He was busy with me, and we know that's not true. Mississippi is basically a bear. You know what a bear in the gay world is? A woman who basically knows that the individual, the man, is gay, but she is like his cover up. And so they begin to kiss, but one of the guys in the entourage don't really believe it, because he has this suspicion look on his face, right? And so in the meantime, we see that Autumn basically has shown up at the strip club, right? And so we see that no, we see that Autumn has showed up, but Autumn really hasn't been around in a while. And so we see that Autumn basically has went to Mercedes' um, locker and has the combination, because when they were in basically the restaurant, Autumn asked Mercedes if she could get the locker. And so this is Mercedes telling her at the restaurant, I hope you don't plan on saving, putting money in there. And so she says, nah. This is when she was telling Mercedes, I don't want to get into it a little bit, but when she was telling Mercedes, with all the money that you're gaining and everything, you have to learn how to do investment, and you got to know something about Bitcoin. And she didn't really know what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is this big, huge thing now that's going on in the internet. Basically, I was like, and still am, where you can invest in different Bitcoins and a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's actually going to be the wave of the future. It's the electronical money. I'll get to it a little bit more. But anyway, we find that Autumn has basically got the combination, and it's 3234. And so this is when she tells Mississippi says, well, how do you feel that if Mercedes know that you're in her locker? And this is when Autumn said, the same way that you're basically trying to, take her spot as far as headlining. And she says, the only one thing about me is that I basically share, what I have. And so this is when she gives the combination, uh, kind of alluding that if you ever need it, the combination, and go and do what you got to do to take care of you. And so we see Mississippi basically looking at the gun, looking at things. So we don't know exactly what's going on, but we don't know, hopefully. And so while I said that Andre is about to get himself in a little skizzy, well, we get a chance to actually see Andre's wife. She's a beautiful woman. She's a doctor. And we see before the wife rings in, because they're having a video chat, before she chimes in, we see that Andre is basically changing the deed. The deed for sale, instead of it being a sales deed, he's putting it into a leasing kind of situation. So, in other words, one of the things that Corbett wanted to do, he wanted to lease. So he persuaded the guy to, lease some of the, I think it was cow's land or anything. I wasn't quite sure about that. But Andre is basically did a shady deal. He had an early meeting with the owner, and the owner told him to get the deal done if he wanted to get your 5%. And this is when he was able to persuade the guy that, not only do you have the casino, but you have a whole bunch of other things. While we're dealing with that, we see that, like I said, it's going to be a little long. We see that the alumni, when I said the alumni, the mayor's secretary basically came back and visit the club, and this is when she told Uncle Clifford, "Look, Uncle Clifford, I'm basically here. I want to have a little chit chat with you." And so this is when we find out that the mayor's secretary basically gave Uncle Clifford some hot tea. I don't think it was like some warm tea. This is what hot tea. And so she went on and told Uncle Clifford that basically they basically are getting ready to push this casino. They basically don't really need any consent or anything, but the only way that they can stop this is that if they petition and get everybody to do a vote on this casino thing. And so this is when Uncle Clifford said, "Oh shit, these women, these people don't really vote up in Chuckalisa." And so that was some hot tea. So Uncle Clifford got some of that. In the meantime, we see that Mississippi has, did it again. She's basically doing her thing on the pole, and she's shining. We see all of these faces and these hearts and everything. And so this is when Mississippi says, "Well, ask Uncle Clifford, said, what do you think about me being the headliner, and the fact that you don't have a headliner? Mercedes is not here. Or how do you feel about a murder night?" A little murder night. And then it's when Clifford said to her, did Little Murder put you up to this? She said, "Nah, Little Murder didn't do this. This is basically my idea." Then this is when Uncle Clifford said, "Oh, my little sweetie, look at her. I have taught her well." In the meantime, we see that Autumn, basically, Autumn is up at the mountains. I think it was the mountain. And she calls Andre, and she tells Andre, "Thank you for the food," because earlier Andre paid for the food. And she tells Andre, she says, "Well, you're in the right place, and Chuckalita needs you, and I'm getting ready to leave, and I just wanted to say goodbye." And so this is when Andre tried to say something. She says, "No, you're right where you belong, and bye." In the meantime, we see that Uncle Clifford, she has basically went and bailed out Patrice, right? So she goes to the bails, and we find out that Uncle Clifford basically put his club up for the bonds. And so Uncle Clifford told her that she does not want her to be a flight risk. And so Patrice says, "I know that you are up to something. The reason why you are up to something," and I'm basically, yeah, she is up to something. And so Uncle Clifford says, "Well, do you still want your church?" And she says, "Yes." So we go on. Cliff has put his church up. So we go on, and then we go on, and we find out that Big L. I almost forgot Big L. I said it's gonna it's gonna be long. Big L. Basically, Big L has basically went to Gidget's friend, who's basically deals in drugs, and he deals in Oxycontin, and he goes and strike a deal with Gidget's boyfriend. But let me just say this: there's a lot of nudity going on, and I have never seen more dingling swinging around, and I'm pretty sure that the gays and the straight women are appreciating me. I'm basically a queer woman, but anyway, so we find out that Big L is getting ready to deal, in keeping Gidget's boyfriend drugs and hiding it for it. Okay, so we go back and we see that um, Autumn has basically told Andre bye. While she's dealing with that, we get the chance to see Andre's wife. She's beautiful, and Andre basically tells her that he struck a deal and he saved some money, but he doesn't think his godfather is going to like it. So he did some shady dealing, and he said one shady dealing or something don't average out the other one. Anyway, Andre is getting ready to get in some shady stuff, and so this is when we see remember the guy that said that, I forgot his name, should have wrote it down but I didn't, uh, said that he was going to go see Mercedes' Last Dance, and he had a fat boy to basically watch it. Well, we get a chance to see this little fat boy, right? Little fat boy is fat, and he does have the ankle bracelet. And so he gets the ankle bracelet for the little fat boy. He was complaining, but he got it. And then this is when we see where Montavious Hill, who basically visited the town, talked to the sheriff and said that his wife was missing. Well, they posted post, and we see basically a post of Haley Clinton. I think I'm not quite sure, but I know it's Clayton or Clinton or something like that. And basically, this is when it goes off. This was very good. I know I probably missed some stuff. Not too sure, but it's a lot going on. Mississippi and a little murder is basically getting ready to hit real big, but I think it's going to be some issues with that. I had no idea that Grandma was basically blind, and that Uncle Clifford inherited a debt. His legacy was the club with a full of debt. Corbett was forced to basically sign a contract that he really didn't want to do, but thanks to Andre doing some willing and dirty, shady dealing, instead of doing a deed, he did a leasing kind of thing. And we see that Big L is basically getting ready to get into some stuff, some selling, we don't know. But we have two more episodes. We know that they have been basically renewed for season 2. So it's they left a lot of things that they can basically draw storylines on. So I think the way that they're going to it is good. Look, this is all things. Cheryl, with your review recap of Down in the Valley, where the girls go naked. Legacy, and basically we learned about a lot of legacy. Till the next time, until I think next Sunday, I'll talk to you later. And remember, the pandemic is still out there. Protect yourself. Remember, love is for everyone. 6 distancing, put on your mask, and stay safe. Till the next time.